Hello, everyone.
Oh.
Welcome. My name is LaShawn Benedict, and I'm here with my buddy, Gordon Thane. And today, we're going to continue on our journey of going through these lessons, and we're on lesson number 8. And just to give you a recap, we've been going through a series of lessons that are a result of our lecture from Western University that we delivered to a bunch of MPH students, and they found it very useful. So today, we're going to be talking about the 8th lesson in our lecture series, which is called Public Health in Business.
You're listening to the Public Health Insight Podcast, your go-to space for all things public health and global health, from the Sustainable Development Goals to the social determinants of health, as well as interesting dialogues about the diverse career opportunities that exist in these fields. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so other people like you can benefit from our content.
Gordon, what do you think?
This is where it all started, right? So 2024 was our third time in a row speaking to the MPH class at Western University. Prior to this year, we didn't do 9 lessons learned. I don't know if you remember what we typically did.
Yeah, didn't we do, we talked about public health insight, didn't we?
Yeah. So the whole lecture was focused around the business mindset around public health in terms of what's possible and our journey in public health insight and from where we started to where we ended up. And that was what we spoke about for a long time.
Yeah.
But understanding that there's people in the class that maybe don't have that type of interest, we decided to balance it a little bit more by incorporating our business venture into a broader 9 lessons learned since completing our MPH.
Right.
And it landed at lesson number 8.
All right. So this must be an important topic if we had a whole lecture to talk about.
Yeah.
What do we talk about?
Exactly. So I think the idea behind what we were trying to impart on the students is around there is a space for a business mindset in public health. We think that you go to school, you find a company to work with, and you always need to work for someone. That's sort of the status quo in the public health field. But over the last 10 years or so, you see a lot of businesses or consulting agencies in public health pop up, and essentially the purpose being to fill some kind of gap that business owners saw that wasn't being addressed appropriately through the existing structures. That's not why we started Public Health Insight. We'll go through how that journey unfolded, and you might have heard it a few times already if you're a longtime follower. But that's ultimately where we landed at some point, and it's a constant evolution throughout the process, and we'll maybe speak about a little bit where we are now because it's always an evolving journey at times, right? It's probably the one that means the most to us in terms of the lessons learned.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into a bit about how we started Public Health Insight. I mean, again, the series that we delivered were for MPH students, and I think this fit really well within that series just because the idea of Public Health Insight was conceived as MPH students, right? It wasn't after we're seasoned in the field of public health that we're like, oh, let's do a business. No, we were dreaming big while in the program, while learning material. We identified gaps. One of those gaps that we identified, communication, knowledge translation in the field, the gap between a research publication and that knowledge from that research getting disseminated and utilized by people in the real world. We found that to be a gap. And we wanted to talk about that because that's what we did at parties and wherever you go. We always just used to chat and yuck it up almost about different topics in public health and how it always linked back to that main source, right? So, yeah.
I think the other part of it too is we wanted a different entry point into public health discourse. I found that those conversations that we used to have, we weren't really having those prior to being in that classroom environment understanding how to have discussions about nuanced topics and understanding differences of opinions and understanding the whole context of the public health landscape. And not everybody is in a public health classroom or is in a classroom where social issues are being discussed in that way. So in order for those issues to resonate, they have to be relatable to more people than are in public health proper. It was important for us to have a medium where we could connect with people who maybe eventually go on to do public health, but at the time of listening to us, the reaction we wanted the most was, oh, wow, this is interesting. And then whether they're in a different industry and they still like the things that we talked about, or whether they were inspired by what we were saying and then they ultimately joined public health, was neither here nor there. The important thing was for us to have those discussions in a kind of natural way that you would talk to sort of anyone on the street or someone that you met for the first time, to bring them into that world so that it was more accessible to have those conversations.
And so how do we actually make that into practice? What do we do?
This is the part of the story that I always make you tell.
Is it? Okay, so...
This is your time to shine.
So we essentially decided to create a podcast in 2020, which was around the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of people were creating podcasts around the time. But yeah,
but to be fair to us, I think we started before. Like
we did.
The groundwork started in January.
Yeah.
I think I remember.
Yeah.
Because we launched at the end of March, which means we would have had to have a lot of things in place.
No, for sure. Yeah, the way it kind of worked out in a way for us though, because a lot of people found themselves indoors more, looking for things to do, and why not listen to a podcast? And again, when we started, we didn't really expect too many people to listen to it, but eventually more and more people listened to it. We got more and more comments and feedbacks, a lot of different emails and opportunities that arose from it. And we actually published a paper about some of those experiences and opportunities that resulted from us publishing weekly public health podcast episodes. And it was really an opportunity for us to talk about some of those issues that we've been seeing in the classroom and in the media and around the world, the different public health challenges. And what we really understood early on is, hey, our perspectives are very much limited. Now, as public health professionals, what can you do to address some of those gaps in your perspectives or opinions or judgments? And one of those things that we determined early on that we wanted to highlight were voices in the community from all around the world to the best as we could, to the best of our ability. And we did this through many different ways. Social media, our podcast, having diverse guests on the podcast, our public health community stars, which is a feature that highlighted a public health professional somewhere around the world, and it allowed them to talk about their story, their understanding of public health, what they found interesting in public health, and their ultimate message in public health, just to get that diverse shared perspective, right? Because we knew literally if we publish a podcast episode every week, we're never going to be able to cover all the nuances of public health and the diversity of topics that exist within the field. And by no means, we're not experts at all in any given topic, right? We're just curious, passionate individuals. And I think that's led us to continue over the last 5 years releasing weekly podcast episodes, just following our passion. But the really interesting thing, and this is the connection to the business part, right? I mentioned that we did this for fun. Tell us a bit about those opportunities that emerged from this and how we started that aha moment. And we're like, oh, maybe this can be something bigger than just a podcast.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I'm trying to go back to patient zero in this context. And I think
Population X?
Population X. I think it would have been maybe a year in at this point, if even that, maybe not even a year in, where someone at the time reached out to us, and then we get the email, you get excited, and then you start reading. It's something about blah, 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 like the episode on this, social determinants of health. I am a professor at the Colorado School of Public Health. I want to use this particular episode and others that I find interesting as teaching material or homework material for a particular course in the program. That was pretty cool because we just graduated. We're kind of sharing our perspectives, and someone found us, and professor nonetheless, and saw the material as credible enough and engaging enough to warrant sharing with her students and also reaching out to tell us and ask permission. But then it got better. It got even better from there. That started an opportunity to have a relationship with her, and then ultimately got invited to her classroom to do a guest lecture on a particular issue and introduce case-based learning to her classroom, which is how we were educated in our MPH program. So obviously, naturally, that made our program director really proud to kind of bring that, what's the word, pedagogy to the Colorado School of Public Health. And there we were preparing a case and breaking it down and looking for engaging ways to connect with the students virtually. And that gave us the energy to continue and be open to other things that might have emerged. And there was plenty of things that came about after that shaped ultimately. LaShawn talked about the business part. We didn't know what the business would look like, but the demand for things that we were getting sort of shaped how we offered services or products based on the requests that we were getting, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah. So shaped from the community.
Exactly.
And just to give people a taste of what that looked like, because again, public health and business entrepreneurship is kind of like what is it? It's kind of murky, cloudy. People don't really know what it's about. But again, getting requests to teach at different universities, getting consulting opportunities from different organizations based on our expertise in public health communication and knowledge translation. And so we've done a lot of work for organizations in Canada, the UK, and abroad. And we get paid, right? So we did not expect from a podcast and putting ourselves out there, these things could be created. And again, people came to us initially asking for a lot of different things and what we can do and how we can help them. And it's led to so many different partnerships, sponsoring conferences, being asked to have formal partnerships with different organizations. It's been a lot. And through that, you start hiring and paying some staff, contractors, and you start thinking about, okay, how do we make this a more legitimate business by doing incorporation, which I know Gordon had a big role in formalizing what we created.
But slow down, because I don't know if you remember, we got our first big thing that we did through the Gardner Foundation.
Oh, we organized we won some event. Grants. We got some grants.
Some grants and sponsorships for that event. And that was sort of the big first thing, which we wouldn't have gotten if we didn't have some kind of clout from our consistent presence. And
that's right. It helps when people know you.
People who are well respected in the space, sort of vouching for the product that we make. And then it turned into that. And then I remember alluding to what you mentioned about incorporating formally as a business is when we started getting like, we'll pay you this amount of money to do this. And then we realized that we had to operate more streamlined in a more professional, a more formal way behind the scenes to give, because it's a different thing when you're exchanging funds for service. It's not, can you wire the money to my personal account? Can you e-transfer me to my personal email address? When you're entering partnerships with organizations and they're going to pay you for service, where's the business number?
Where's the HST number?
HST.
Different things.
It's got to look legit to be able to kind of operate in that way. So we realized...
Not only got to be legit, not got to look legit, but actually has to be legit, right?
LaShawn doing invoices, right? Yeah. Like making them look really like consistent with what the industry looks like and making it I remember when we did the first couple, we maybe didn't realize that certain things were supposed to be there, and like it was growing pains for sure.
And but to cut us some slack,
Yeah.
these are things we haven't really
Yeah.
been taught before or learned before.
Yeah.
We kind of just figured it out and learned as we went along, as you mentioned.
We're super ambitious.
Which is really exciting. I think it was very new to us, and it was exciting to get just new contracts and work with different people in public health. And mind you, Gordon and I also had full-time jobs outside of what we're doing for the consulting stuff through Public Health Insight. So balancing all those things as well.
Yeah, for sure. Opening that business account.
Yeah.
Understanding all the paperwork involved.
Signing the attestation forms.
Figuring out the tax, you incorporate. Now you have to file taxes every year.
Yeah.
Realizing how much you have to pay an accountant to do taxes, and then deciding if you want to save some money to learn it yourself, and worrying if you're messing up. There's a lot that goes behind formalizing your business, and I guess it could scare a lot of people away. But that's a path we went down because it was the right thing to do at the time for where we were at, and we learned a lot from doing that.
That's right. And part of the journey, and as we kind of mentioned many times, we've been building networks this whole time. So over the last 5 years, building networks. And one of those key networks that kind of brought or made more strong the connection between public health, business / entrepreneurship was some of the work that Dr. C.H. Huntley was doing with her business and her podcast, which was directed more at public health professionals with ambitions to be entrepreneurs and starting and creating their own business. And she hosts a yearly conference dedicated to public health entrepreneurs, and it's called the Public Health Expo. And bunch of people across the U.S., Canada, and who knows where.
Yeah, some UK folks, I think.
Yeah. They joined this virtually, and there's an in-person piece. And one of the years, I think in 2023, Gordon and I were actually part of the guest speaker panel for this conference, which was such an honor. And shout out to Dr. Huntley for making that happen and reaching out to us. But you develop so many different partnerships, and you learn about the great work and the business people are doing in public health, not just your traditional 9-to-5, but you develop a set of skill sets, tools, techniques, and a know-how as you kind of progress throughout your career. How do you actually tap into that and think about ways to market yourself and offer different services that are valuable to people? Right?
Refine your goals. What
exactly.
Refine the services. How does that evolve over time? How you're not getting maybe the clients that you want, the volume of clients that you want. Having a community of like-minded people around you to inspire, motivate you, and to run different challenges by. And that's what Dr. Huntley tries to do with this expo. Yeah. It's something that you take away, like a refreshed approach to address challenges that you've been facing, or to build on the strengths that you already have, which is also a refreshing thing to do. So, yeah.
And while we're on the topic of Dr. Huntley, she actually created a second podcast that's dedicated specifically to public health entrepreneurs. So if you're listening to this and we piqued your interest in any way in this business kind of entrepreneurship aspect of public health, check out her podcast.
We'll put a link in the description too.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description. Will we? You will.
Yeah, we will.
I won't. You will.
Yeah.
I'm joking. This is a shout out to last episode where I'm like, yeah, we'll insert the clip.
Yeah.
You're like, we will.
Yeah, I was like, you're going to go back in the archives and find that voice clip?
We will. So we will. Great listen. So much wisdom from Dr. Huntley. So a huge shout out to her for bringing us in and consistently just being there for us as well. So thank you.
Now, we could talk about this all day, right? But I think the main idea here is that there are a lot of things that we've learned throughout this process that are applicable to this business or other businesses themselves, or to just your overall professional and career development. There's a lot of things that we took out of this experience. One of the ones that we always talk about, LaShawn, is when you have something that you own, it serves as your creative outlet. A lot of times you're in a formal employment situation and you're left frustrated by maybe having one hand tied behind your back. Even though you might enjoy what you do, you wish there was specific things that you could do in addition. Having your own business, perhaps that's a vehicle that you could explore that strength of yours to see if you can capitalize on what you have to offer, and if there's a market out there for that service, and how you can monetize that in some way or be of service to the community that you identify with, right? That's a big one for us specifically.
And I think to that point, though, it can be great doing this work. However, it's not easy. I just want to underscore it's not easy. Like I alluded to earlier, there's a lot of time that goes into it, a lot of sacrifice, and
hard to do alone too. I don't know how people do it.
Yeah, it's hard to do alone,
themselves.
but also there's kind of some challenges doing it with other people too.
Yeah,
so
it's a balance.
It's a balance there. So what I was gonna say is, it's you might be doing all this stuff and promoting yourself, and you might not get any leads or anything like that, and it sucks. It's a reality of the situation, but you just got to keep at it, keep innovating, and keep thinking about different creative ways to get your messages out there and your brand out there and your business out there, and go outside your comfort zone and utilize your networks that you've created already. So it's tough and it takes a while. A business is not created over one day. Like, it takes time to build a brand and build your services and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, right? So we don't want it to seem that Public Health Insight was just all smooth sailing. Like, it took time, it took some mistakes, and then we learned from those mistakes to grow and grow.
But there's also value and something to be said in terms of people who have worked for a long period of time too before starting a business. So there's benefits of starting a business early, making mistakes early, learning quicker, and iterating and getting up to speed quicker than you would have if you waited.
Yeah.
But there's also something to be said if you were a professional in the field for 25, 30 years and you have this wealth of knowledge that you can then bring into a business. You would have learned, depending on the position that you were in, you would have learned how contracts are negotiated. You'd have learned being in rooms where you're problem solving, understanding how to recruit staff and pay staff and a lot of those kind of technical things that you would understand from working for an employer in the real world for a period of time, and then being able to bring that into your business. But then on the other side, you can start early, not maybe have that experience, but make mistakes quicker and quicker, fail forward, as they say, and maybe get to the same place from a different pathway. So everybody has a different journey.
Right. Absolutely. And then we already mentioned this, one of those takeaways of finding that gap in public health and trying to fill those in. That's a great place to start, right? If you already find something that's missing in public health or a gap, why don't you try finding ways to fill in those gaps? It's a really easy place to start, as opposed to just going into an area where it's already saturated and trying to innovate from there. Also balancing that with your interests. Like, if you're just not interested in that area, it's not probably going to work out well for you. Sorry. But, just try identifying there's gaps. There's so many gaps in public health. Who are we kidding? So find the one that you're passionate about and you're interested about, and think about different pieces of the puzzle. Like, what is the overall market value of that specific area? And is there potential to innovate in this area or disrupt a specific area? So those are things to think about when you're thinking about what you want to do.
So I'll leave everyone with this. If you're someone that has started a business, currently running a business, or are thinking of starting a business in public health, we want to hear, like, what are some of the things you think about and that you struggle with? We shared what our growing pains and growing excitements were throughout the process. what are yours? We'd be curious to hear if you're listening and this episode resonated with you. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, we have a link in the description of the podcast where you click on it and you can send us a text message, right? Free of cost.
We don't know that if you don't have a plan, that's going to cost you money, but we're not responsible.
We're not responsible, so I won't say free of cost. I believe
text responsibly.
Whatever your plan is, it's under those conditions of your plan. But we get a notification, and in the next episode, we're able to shout you out and engage with your comments. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll give you a shout out. Alrighty. So this has been LaShawn and Gordon talking about public health, business, and entrepreneurship. And we're signing out.
Until next time.
Peace.
Peace. This show was edited by me, Gordon Thane, with additional editing from LaShawn Benedict. Sound design and mixing by myself and LaShawn Benedict. The original music from The Music Room, composed by Tom Fox, licensed from Johnny Harris. The cover art design for our show by LaShawn Benedict. The Public Health Insight podcast is produced by PHI Media. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Insight podcast, your go-to space for informative conversations, inspiring community action. If you enjoy our podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. See you in the next one.